Hello again. So, children whose fathers were dead assigned their grandfather's surname or their uncle's surname. Only children of unknown fathers were given their mother's surname. Some accounts have surnames being distributed according to town size, with A surnames given to the provincial capitals and C surnames to smaller towns. So she's talking about the history of surnames and how like there was a surname catalog which forced people to have last names because again like this was a colonial thing. Like they come in and the Spanish need everyone to like adopt a last name because that's how they can keep track of people better. Again, like they're ignoring how these people lived on the land in the Philippines themselves without last names, but they have to do what like the colonial settler ruler says, right? So and C names, smaller towns, natives who were already converted to Christianity might choose a name like De los Santos of the Saints, while natives who revered local heroes might choose an indigenous name like Abayani, heroic. And again, like the names were translated using Spanish grammar and Spanish rules, kind of like how Korean names like Wu will look different in Hangul, but then they gotta be Romanized for English. According to 1973 introduction to the catalog written by Domingo Abella, then director of the Bureau of Records Management in OS. For example, the letter R is so prevalent that besides the Roas, Reborianos, Rebejantes, etc., some claim with tongue in cheek that the town was produced by Romualdez, Rizal, and Roosevelt. The explanation is simple. In 1849, the provincial governor simply allocated to each town a number of pages from the Catalogo from which the people could choose their surnames. Today, almost a century later, the effect of the governor's will is still very much a part of the Philippine life. The effect on the Philippine historiography is mixed, Abela adds, remarkably mildly, considering that what he's describing is a state-sanctioned cultural genocide. One obvious negative result is that genealogical studies for families from the towns where the decree was enforced are hopelessly handicapped without good fortune of stumbling on a document giving both old and new surnames. It is almost impossible to identify Filipino family trees beyond 1849, which also means the practice that I've sometimes witnessed of fellow Filipinx people, not limited to Filipinx Americans, using their names to trace a etymological path back to a hoped for history, is shaky at best. I know how that is. Like, I cannot trace my name back, you know. I knew some people who thought that because their names are indigenous pre-colonial names, it meant that their ancestors fought the Spaniards better than others. The pick-me school of post-colonialism. I knew some people who thought that because their names belonged to a Spanish noble family in Asturias, it meant that they too were descended from European aristocracy, often preening over this perceived family link. One family I knew of even created a fake Spanish heraldic shield for themselves in the aspirational manner akin to the way some Filipinx celebrities identify themselves as Spanish, Chinese, and Malay, because apparently identifying as Pinoy doesn't quite have the same cultural, which is to say, colonial cachet. But the truth is, for many of us, neither an indigenous name nor a Spanish name actually indicates much of anything. Because of the decree, both types of names were words put into a book by our colonizers for our ancestors to choose from. Then Abea concludes, in what feels like the kind of heavy, conflict-averse sigh that reminds me of some of my more resigned post-Marcos relatives. There is, in the last analysis, nothing a historian can do to change a decision made and carried out more than a century ago. Whether they like it or not, Filipinos must go on living with the consequences of the Caleva decree. So basically, they won't know. I will likely never know what the many names of my ancestors were before their colonial governors sent them this grotesquely permanent multiple choice quiz. What I do know is that my name is itself the trace of a disaster, a disaster that repeats itself every time it's uttered. It's also an epic work of Spanish storytelling. But our small, resistant act of repronunciation, of pronouncing that very Spanish name distinctly in a Filipino way, one that's not even all Filipinx people agree upon. I've learned to my delight when I tell people how to pronounce my name. Gathers up the pieces. It makes something that isn't new exactly, but isn't only what it was. Someone somewhere had to choose the name Castillo. Whether they loved that name or hated that name or really didn't give a crap, took it and just kept moving, I'll never really know. But pronouncing it in my family's way here and now makes something of that enduring La Suna, shouts a punchline back to the word. It's a work of Philippine X storytelling, a work of decolonial reading and remembering. Okay, so I just thought this was cool. She's describing a Greek word called xenia. People often say, certainly my old classics professors did, that the entire Homeric world, the entirety of classical antiquity, really is founded upon this idea of hospitality, this practice of xenia. But that's not quite it. The Homeric world is founded not on hospitality, but on the absolute limits of hospitality. Who expects hospitality and never gives it, who deserves hospitality and never gets it. The idea of hospitality here is really an idea of civilization. Aren't we a part of a civilization? Xenia is the way to describe what it meant for the people within that civilization to be a guest, what it meant to ask for favor from one another, what it meant to enter the home and therefore world of another. Xenia was a type of enclosure. It was a way of understanding who we were and who they were. We know such enclosures very well today. Sometimes they take form of a literal wall, sometimes a cage, sometimes the stripping of votes and from a specific population, sometimes a red baseball cap. The Cyclops, however, has a different culture. He doesn't believe in or observe any of those laws of Xenia. He eats two of Odysseus' men because to him they are like sheep. But of course this act means that to Odysseus, Polyphemus' life is now forfeit. That Polyphemus might live outside the practices Odysseus holds to be universal doesn't occur to Odysseus, son of Laertes, man of many minds, that in the eyes of Polyphemus the men the size of Odysseus and his comrades are as cows and lambs are to a human. Diet doesn't occur to Odysseus, son of Laertes, man of many resources. That Odysseus has asked for hospitality from a man whose home he's broken into, and whose food and animals he's stolen doesn't occur to Odysseus, son of Laertes, man of many ways. When the destined moment comes and Odysseus stabs Polyphemus in the eye, the Cyclops blinding him, he lies to the Cyclops, tells him that his name is Otis, nobody, no man, so that when the dirty deed is done, the Cyclops cries out in pain, nobody is killing me by fraud, nobody is killing me by force. So basically the story of Odysseus and the Cyclops was about him breaking into a guy's home, I guess. But yeah, this is the notoriously ironic scene of the Cyclops, which most of us know best. I don't even remember that Greek story, but still, this is pretty cool. This is also the genius trap Odysseus sets, a trap that is fundamentally a social structure. Whoa. Right? Because we're just taught, oh, no one's doing anything to me, you're just crazy for no reason. His ability to dictate the terms of his visibility, his knowability, right? Like, let's say you rob from a business. Robbing is bad, y'all. But it's like, that's bad because everyone knows you did it. But then let's say you have a boss, right, that robs you and robs the wages of like millions of workers, which happens all the time. Well, it's still like nobody can tell who did it. No one can tell who made a mistake in the computer with the paychecks. Like, oh, we can't claim a name of like who's not letting you get your money. Like, again, a lot of people are just throwing stones and hiding their hands. He makes Polyphemus blind not only physically but socially, for now he can no longer know or even name the one who has injured him. Odysseus shows us how to destroy life without ever having to be accountable for it. Does the life of a savage even count as life? But Odysseus still isn't quite satisfied with the nameless safety of an escape. After he mutilates Polyphemus' eye. You can't resist revealing his true name after all. He says, Cyclops, if anyone asks you who it was that put your eye out and spoiled your beauty, say it was the valiant warrior Ulysses, son of Laertes, who lives in Ithaca. The boast is like his identity card he throws at Polyphemus' feet. It pierces more keenly than any spear in the eye.